All right, now we're going to talk about the second half of lesson 10.3. So last time we talked about frequency distribution tables. That's when I have a whole bunch of numbers and many of the numbers have more than one of that number. So I'd say how many of each number I have. Now sometimes I have so many numbers, I don't want to show how many of each number I have. I just want to show how many in this group I have. So for example, how many do I have from 0 to 10? How many do I have from 11 to 20, so on? Or how many do I have from 1 to 100? How many do I have from 100 to 200, and so on? So that's called an interval between 0 and 10, or 1 and 100. That's an interval. So an interval frequency table says how many do I have in this section of numbers. So not how many 24s I have, or how many 25s I have, but how many do I have between 20 and 25, or between 20 and 30? How many numbers do I have in that interval? So an interval is a group of numbers. Between this number and that number, we call that an interval. So in a interval frequency table, what I'm going to do is say how many do I have among the numbers. So I'm going to do in your book number 21. Number 20 is going to be very similar to that. So notice in this section from 17 through 22, you're making frequency interval tables. The way that you're going to make these is they're going to give you a list of numbers, and then they're going to give you the intervals that they want you to do it in. So for example, for number 18, they want you to do it in intervals of 10. Notice for intervals of 10, it's not 0 to 10. It's 0 to 9 is the first interval, 10 to 19 is the second, 20 to 29, 30 to 39. So those are the intervals you should use for number 18. For number 20 and 21, it wants you to do intervals of 20. So notice I have 0 to 19, then the next is going to be 20 to 39. This is the same to be doing for number 20. These are the intervals. And then 40 to 59, 60 to 79. For number 22, you're going to be doing intervals of 100. So it's 0 to 99. Then the next interval would be 100 to 199. And then the next interval would be 200 to 299, 300 to 399, and so on. So when you're making these frequency interval tables, the first thing you want to do is your intervals. So whatever they ask you for, use those intervals. So for number 21, they're asking me to do every 20, so it's 0 to 19, and then 20 to 39, and then 40 to 59, and then 60 to 79. The next thing you're going to do, I'm going to go drop over to this, to the frequency. The frequency is just like the other one, but instead of saying how many 10s or 11s do I have, it says how many do I have from this number to this number. So for example, how many in this list, how many are from 0 to 19? Well, let's just count them. So no. Yep, that's from 0 to 19. 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 Nope. So I have 4 numbers from 0 to 19, so I'm going to put a 4 there for my frequency. That's how many numbers I have from 0 to 19. Those 4 numbers are between 0 and 19. That's how many I have. Next, you're going to find your midpoint. Your midpoint is very easy. All you have to do is add your 2 numbers together, your first and your last, and divide by 2. So 0 plus 19 divided by 2 is 9.5. I already did the rest of them, but you would do 20 plus 39 divided by 2 is 29.5. 40 plus 59 divided by 2, 49.5. Remember, you can use a calculator for this lesson. Last is your product. Just like last time, you're going to be multiplying, but this time for the interval, it's going to be a little different. I can't multiply by an interval. That's why I have my midpoint. That gives me about the middle of the interval. So I'm going to do my midpoint times my frequency to get the product. And in this case, that's going to be 38. So every time, I already did the rest of these, midpoint times frequency gives me the product. Then again, just like for my normal frequency distribution table, I'm not going to add these or these, but I am going to add all my frequencies, so my total is 13, and add all my products, so this is my total. So to make a frequency distribution table, which is what you're doing for 18, 20, and 22, first of all, pay attention to what intervals they want. Use those intervals over here at the side. Then look at the numbers and count how many numbers are in each interval. That's going to be your frequency. Then for your midpoint, you're just going to take the first number in the interval, add it to the last number in the interval, so 0 to 19, 0 plus 19, divide by 2. If it's 20 to 39, I'll be 20 plus 39, 59 divided by 2, 29.5. That gives you your midpoint. Last, for your product, multiply the midpoint, not the interval, the midpoint times how many I have to get the product. Then add up all your products to get your total product. Add up all your frequencies to get your total frequency. Just like for the frequency distribution table, if I want my mean or my average, which is all you need to do after you do this table for 18, 20, and 22, you're going to have to divide my product total by my frequency and round to the 10th. So if I divide 443.5 and I divide that by 13, I'm going to get 34.1. So my mean is 34.1. So for numbers 18, 20, and 22, you're going to be using your intervals that they give you. There's different intervals for each one of those, so pay attention. Find the midpoint, the frequency, product. Once you have filled out this table, that's your first answer. And your second answer is dividing your product by your frequency and then rounding to the 10th. Now, once you have your frequency distribution table, for numbers 28 and 30, you're going to have to do what we call a histogram. So what a histogram is, I have an example over here, is it's going to be similar to my scatter plot in the way I set it up, but then different to the way I actually graph it. So on the bottom, on what we would call the x-axis, are going to be my intervals. So in this case, if I want to make a histogram out of this frequency distribution table, my intervals are 0 to 19, so I write 0 to 19 first. My next interval is 20 to 39, so I write that next. My next interval is 40 to 59, so I write that next. And my last interval is 60 to 79, so I write that. Then on the side is the amount that are in each one. So you could do it by ones. If there is really big amounts, if the amounts go up to like 20 or 40 or something like that, you could do every 2 here, so 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, or even every 5, 0, 5, 10, 15, if there's a ton of numbers there. But this is the amount, the frequency that I have of each interval. Now what I'm going to do, instead of putting dots, I'm going to do a bar. So for 0 to 19, I had 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a bar from 0 to 19 all the way up to 4, like this. Okay? Now for 20 to 39, I have 5. So I'm going to go all the way up to, sorry, I did not go up to 4. I went up to 3. So I go up to 4. Then for 20 to 39, I go up to 5. Now this is very important. In a histogram, the sides must touch. You cannot leave gaps between your things. That is what we'll talk about later. That's a different type of graph. So the histogram is continuous. It goes from 0 to 19 and then 20, so it's right next to each other. So make sure your bars are right next to each other. There's no gap between them. So it shouldn't look like this. You see that gap? You should not have a gap. They have to be touching each other. 40 to 59, I have 1, so I only go up to 1. Again, make sure that they touch. So I lined it up with 1 here. Notice 0 to 19, I lined up with 4. 20 to 39, I lined up with 5. And then finally, 60 to 79, I have 3. So I'm going to go all the way up to 3. Make sure it's lined up. And that's my histogram. I can shade those in if I want. So then that shows me very clearly how much I have of each in a graph format. So this is called a histogram. I put my intervals on the bottom, and then on the side I put my graph that represents the amount. You can do that by 1s, by 2s, by 5s, by 10s, depending on how big the numbers go for the frequencies. Then you're going to put all the way up to the frequency of that number for your histogram. Finally, I'm going to give you one more example. For 24 and 26, they give you part of an interval frequency table, and they want you to figure out all 4 measures of central tendency. The range, the mean, the modal interval, and the medium interval. So, the first thing you want to do is you have to find your they give you the frequencies, you have to find your midpoints. So I rewrote, this is number 23 in your book, I redid, they gave me all the intervals and they gave me all the frequencies. But I want to find the midpoint. So remember, to find the midpoint, I do the first plus the last, divide by 2. So 10 plus 14, that's 28, divided by 2 would be 14. Sorry, 10 plus 14 is 24, divided by 2 would be 12. So this would be 12 right here. 10 plus 14, that's 24, divided by 2 is 12. And then I did that for everyone. 15 plus 19 divided by 2 is 17. 20 plus 24 divided by 2 is 22. So they give you the intervals and they give you the frequencies, but you have to find the midpoints. Again, you just do that by adding the two numbers, dividing by 2. Then you also have to find the products. The same thing we did back here. You're going to multiply your midpoint times your frequency. So 12 times 5 is 60. Midpoint times frequency. I did it for all the rest of these. And then they already added up the frequencies for you, but then you need to add up your products. Now, once you have done that, the range is easy. For the range, notice I don't have one number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my last number of my last interval, so that's 34, right? And I'm going to subtract it from the first number in the first interval, which in this case is 10. So I do 34 minus 10, and that's going to give me a range of 24. Okay? So the last number in the last interval minus the first number in the first interval. For my mean, I do it the exact same thing I did here. Now that I've done all this, I have my products. Remember, you're going to have to do the midpoints and the products because they only give you your intervals and your frequencies. But once you have added up all your products and divided it by your frequency, that will give you your mean. Remember, always round to the 10th. In this case, it's going to be 24.0 is your mean. We're going to divide 1026 by 48. Now, for the median and the mode, they're not going to be one number. They're actually going to be intervals. So it's not a median number because I don't have one number over here. It's not a modal number because I don't have one number. I have intervals. So let's do the modal interval first. That should be the easiest. Again, that's just the one that has the biggest frequency. So the one that has the biggest frequency is 20 to 24. Has 19 numbers between 20 and 24. So my modal interval is 20 to 24. So make sure for numbers 24 and 26 for the mode, it's an interval. It's the interval that has the most numbers. Finally, my median interval is very similar to what I did for my median before, but again, it's going to be an interval. So I take my total number is 48. That's even, so remember that means I'm going to have 2. And I'm going to divide by 2. 48 divided by 2 is 24, so I'm looking for my 24th and my 25th number. What interval are my 24th and 25th number in? So I did tally marks to help me. So since this has 5, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The next one has 12, so that's 5. Then 5 more, that's 10, 15, 17. Remember, I wanted the 24th and the 25th number. Then I have 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. 24 and 25 are both in this interval. So my medium interval is 20 to 24. Because remember, I'm looking for this divided by 2, my 24th and my 25th number. They're both in the same interval, so my median interval is the interval of 20 to 24. Again, I know this lesson is a little more difficult, so you might want to rewatch this video. You might want to watch the videos on the website that I posted on Google Classroom. And please stay in touch with me if you need extra help or have extra questions. Hopefully, this helped explain some of that.